Determined to surprise my husband, I bought coffee and went to his workplace. But as soon as I walked into the office, his secretary ran up, turned pale, grabbed my arm, and quickly pulled me into the coat closet, whispering as she shut the door. I didn't have time to ask anything, and a minute later, my husband walked in, and I heard something that made the blood freeze in my veins. Welcome to the channel. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We are very interested. We hope you enjoy listening to this fascinating story. Sophia woke up that morning with a light feeling of joy she hadn't felt in a long time. Outside, a fine drizzle was falling, thin drops of water sliding down the glass, while inside the condo it felt cozy and warm. She rolled onto her side, looked at the empty half of the bed, and smiled. Mark had left for work before dawn as usual. He had always been a workaholic, especially in recent years. Meetings, conferences, business trips. All of that had become a normal part of their lives. Sophia had resigned herself to that rhythm a long time ago, though sometimes she missed simple human warmth. A normal conversation over a cup of coffee. She got up, put on her robe, and went to the kitchen. She turned on the coffee maker and took her favorite mug with the daisy pattern out of the cabinet. While the water heated up, Sophia walked over to the window and looked out at the gray courtyard, watching the swings swaying rhythmically in the wind. Suddenly, she remembered how she and Mark used to walk through here many years ago when they had just moved into this place. He would put his arm around her shoulders and tell her they would be happy, that he would do everything possible to give them the best. Back then, she believed every single one of his words. She looked at him with admiration, happy to have such a strong and reliable husband. The coffee maker clicked, and Sophia returned to the counter. She poured her coffee, stirred in a splash of creamer, and stared thoughtfully at the spoon. Lately, she had realized that she and her husband had become strangers living under the same roof. In the morning, he would leave at night. He would come back tired, eat dinner in silence, and lock himself in his home office. They barely spoke. She would try to ask him how his day was, how work was going, but she only ever got short answers. Fine. It was okay. I'm just tired. Sometimes she would go into his office, sit on the edge of the sofa, and try to start a conversation about something important. He would just nod while staring at his monitors, replying absent-mindedly. Sophia would leave feeling like an intruder in her own home. She finished her coffee and looked at the clock. 10:00 a.m. Today was her day off. She could just relax, binge-watch a show, do some chores, organize the closets, or maybe finally go through those boxes in the attic that had been sitting there for 5 years. But suddenly, she felt an internal stubbornness, a desire to change the situation. Why not do something nice? Why not remind her husband that she loved him, that she was there for him? Maybe he was just lacking attention and affection. Maybe he was exhausted from work and she just needed to be closer to support him. Sophia got dressed quickly, choosing a light blouse and dark slacks, put on some lipstick, and looked at herself in the mirror. 50 years old, and I still don't look half bad, she thought. A few gray streaks at her temples, some laugh lines around her eyes, but a lively, kind gaze. Mark always used to say she had beautiful eyes. Truth be told, the last time he said that was so long ago that Sophia couldn't even remember when it was. She grabbed her purse and her car keys and left the condo. As she walked down the stairs, she was already planning her route. First, she would stop by that corner coffee shop Mark liked so much. They made an incredible cinnamon cappuccino. He always ordered that one. They used to go there often back when they still found time for each other. Then she would go to his corporate office. It would be a surprise. He'd be shocked, of course. But it would be a pleasant surprise, right? Maybe they could even grab lunch together. They hadn't done that in ages. Sophia got into her older sedan and started the engine. The rain was picking up. The windshield wipers squeaked rhythmically against the glass. She pulled out of the complex and drove down familiar streets. Along the way, she thought about what to buy for dinner. Maybe she would make something special today. Mark loved her classic pot roast with potatoes and carrots. Or maybe she'd try something new. Look up a recipe online. The coffee shop greeted her with the aroma of freshly ground beans and soft jazz music. Behind the counter, a smiling young barista in an apron with the shop's logo looked up. "Good morning. What can I get for you? 2 tall cinnamon cappuccinos to go, please. And could you double cup them so they stay hot?" "Sure thing, coming right up. Give me about 5 minutes." Sophia waited, looking out the window at the rainy street. People were hurrying by under umbrellas. Cars drove past, splashing water onto the sidewalk. An elderly woman with a small dog stopped in front of the boutique next door, peering at a display. A young couple ran past, laughing and huddling together under a single umbrella. Sophia remembered how she and Mark used to come here on weekends. They would sit by the window and talk about everything. He would tell her about work, share his plans, dream about taking a real vacation, buying a cabin in the mountains, spending their summers there. When did all of that end? When did they stop just being together? Your order is ready. The barista handed her 2 cups and a cardboard carrier. That'll be $11.50. Thank you so much. Sophia paid, grabbed the coffees, and stepped out into the street. She let the rain hit her face for a second, then quickly got into her car, placed the carrier in the cup holder between the seats, started the engine, and headed toward the downtown business district, where her husband's office was located. The drive took about 20 minutes. She drove carefully, unhurried, glancing at her GPS. She knew the area. She had been there a couple of times when she had to drop off some forgotten documents for Mark, or pick him up after work on those rare days his car was in the shop. The corporate center was a tall, modern glass high-rise, its mirrored windows reflecting the gray sky. Sophia parked in the adjacent garage, got out of the car, and grabbed the coffees. The rain had slowed to a light mist. She walked to the entrance and pushed through the heavy revolving door. The lobby greeted her with crisp air conditioning, marble floors, and high ceilings. It smelled like expensive cologne and corporate money. At the security desk, a uniformed guard looked up as Sophia approached. "Good morning. Who are you here to see?" "Mark Davis on the 7th floor," Sophia smiled. "I'm his wife." The guard nodded without asking for her ID and pointed toward the elevators. "Go right ahead, ma'am." She thanked him and walked to the elevator banks. Inside, there was a mirror taking up the entire back wall. Sophia looked at her reflection. Her face looked a little nervous, her hair slightly damp from the rain. She smoothed it down with her hand and exhaled. "Everything is going to be fine. It's just a surprise. Mark will love it." The elevator glided silently up to the 7th floor. The doors slid open. The hallway was quiet and empty. The walls were painted a soft beige lined with framed abstract art. Beneath her feet, thick carpeting muffled the sound of her footsteps. Sophia walked past several doors with silver nameplates indicating names and titles: lawyers, accountants, managers. Finally, she saw the plaque she was looking for. Mark Davis, VP of Development. Her heart was beating faster than normal. "This is silly," she thought. "It's just a surprise for my husband. Why am I so nervous?" She pushed the door open and stepped into the reception area. The room was small and professional. Near the window sat a desk, and behind it was his secretary, Brenda, a woman in her 40s with her hair pulled back into a neat bun, wearing a sharp navy blue blazer. Sophia had seen her a couple of times when she had visited Mark for work-related things. Brenda was always polite, but a bit distant, very professional. Diplomas and certificates hung on the walls, and a bookshelf held neat rows of binders. "Good morning, Brenda." Sophia smiled, lifting the coffee carrier. "I brought some coffee for Mark." A surprise, Brenda looked up from her computer, and Sophia watched the secretary's face change instantly. All the color drained from her cheeks, as if someone had wiped it away with a sponge. Her eyes went wide, her lips trembled and parted. Brenda stood up from her chair so abruptly that it rolled backward and slammed into a filing cabinet. She nearly knocked over the half-empty mug of tea sitting next to her keyboard, her hand shooting out to grab it at the last second. "Mrs. Davis." Her voice sounded hoarse, strained, completely different from her usual professional tone. "You didn't let us know you were coming." "Well, that's because it's a surprise." Sophia felt a bit taken aback by such a dramatic reaction. She tried to smile wider, but something in Brenda's eyes made her smile freeze. Did something happen? "Is Mark in?" Brenda lunged around the desk toward her. Her movements were erratic, almost panicked. She grabbed Sophia by the elbow. Her fingers were cold and strong, gripping tightly, almost painfully. Sophia almost dropped the coffees. "Quick into the closet," Brenda whispered, darting her eyes toward the door of Mark's private office as if expecting someone to walk out at any second. "Quick, please, I'm begging you." "What, Brenda, what are you talking about?" Sophia tried to pull away, but the secretary held on tight. "Please don't ask questions right now, just do it." Brenda was already dragging her toward a large built-in coat closet at the back of the room. She yanked the door open with a sharp motion. Inside, several jackets, winter coats, and spare blazers were hanging. It smelled of cedar dust and a faint hint of men's cologne. "Please step inside. It is incredibly important right now." Brenda's voice was shaking. Sophia looked into the secretary's eyes and saw genuine terror. It wasn't a joke or a prank or an overreaction. It was real, pure panic. Her face was ashen, beads of sweat forming on her forehead, and her hands were trembling. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. Brenda, what is going on? I'll explain later. I swear to you. There's no time right now. Brenda practically shoved her into the closet, and Sophia, offering no more resistance, stepped inside. She could barely balance the coffee cups, which nearly slipped from her grasp. Don't make a sound. No matter what happens, not a single sound. The door clicked shut, and Sophia found herself in the dark. Her heart was pounding so hard it felt like it could be heard from the outside. She stood among the hangers and clothes, pressing the cooling coffee cups against her chest. Coats and jackets brushed against her shoulders and face. It was warm and cramped. Through a narrow gap between the double doors, a faint sliver of light from the reception area filtered in. What was that all about? Why was Brenda so terrified? And why on earth had she actually obeyed and hidden in a closet, like a schoolgirl playing hide-and-seek? It was absurd, stupid, but the fear in the secretary's eyes had been so real. Sophia couldn't help but believe her. She tried to slow her breathing and strained her ears. Through the closet door, she heard muffled sounds. Brenda's heels clicking rapidly on the floor, the rustling of papers, the click of the front door's electronic lock. The door to the private office opened, and heavy, confident male footsteps stepped out. "Good morning, Mr. Davis." Brenda's voice sounded forced, falsely cheerful, like she was trying to play a role but doing a terrible job of it. "You have a conference call with the partners in half an hour. Do you want me to give you a 5-minute warning?" "I know, Brenda," her husband replied. Sophia recognized his voice instantly, but there was something different about it. It sounded light, almost joyful, relaxed. He hadn't spoken to her like that in a very long time, maybe never. "Put Steve through right now. I want to clear up some details about the wire transfer. I don't want to discuss it in front of everyone. Of course I'll patch him through right away." The footsteps retreated. The door to Mark's office clicked shut. Silence. Sophia stood in the dark, holding the cups, completely unable to comprehend what was happening. Why was she hiding from her own husband? What the hell was Brenda doing? Maybe Mark just had an important meeting and didn't want to be interrupted. But then why the absolute terror in the secretary's eyes? And then she heard Mark's voice, loud and clear, coming from his office through the thin drywall. He had put his phone on speaker. "Yeah, Steve. Hey man, what's up? How's life?" An unfamiliar male voice responded with a hearty laugh. The voice was gruff, casual. "Everything's good, buddy." "All good." "Hey, you promised to help with the cash transfer for Lauren. When can you do it? She's called me 3 times already. Says it's urgent." Mark laughed. Sophia stood frozen, listening to every word. What money? Who was Lauren? Why was Steve helping transfer money to a woman? "I'll wire it this week like always, Steve." "Don't worry about it." Her husband spoke with utter nonchalance, as if discussing a grocery list. "I already explained, it's easier to route it through your account. Leaves less of a paper trail. Lauren and the kid need the money for Luke's private lessons. He also needs some new sports gear. Kids are always needing something, you know how it is." Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. "Lauren. The kid. Luke." Mark was transferring money through Steve to a woman and a child. "Yeah. Kids are expensive, I know from experience," Steve replied. "But you're a genius for setting it up this way. Routing it all through me with no direct trail. I gotta respect the hustle. How's your legal wife doing?" Sophia suspect anything. Sophia's fingers, trembling and slick with sweat, slid into her slacks pocket. Her cell phone. Slowly, trying not to make a sound, trying not to brush against the hangers, she pulled it out. The screen lit up, blinding her for a second, and she squinted. She found the Voice Memos app and hit the red record button. Let there be proof. So he couldn't lie later, couldn't make excuses, couldn't gaslight her or convince her she misunderstood, that she imagined it, that she was paranoid. Sophia felt dizzy. Her fingers gripped the coffee cups tighter. The plastic lids let out a tiny creak. Wife. Kid. Lauren. Luke. What did all of this mean? What other wife? What other child? Mark laughed again, and in that laugh there wasn't an ounce of shame or a gram of remorse. It sounded light, satisfied, like a man who had just closed a massive business deal. "What are you talking about? It's a sweet setup, Steve. She doesn't ask questions. She works 2 jobs, breaks her back like a mule, pays all the loans I've been taking out. She thinks it's for our condo, for renovations for our future. And meanwhile, I'm funding my second family. I've been doing this for 5 years and it runs like clockwork." Sophia covered her mouth with her hand to keep from screaming. The coffee cups shook in her other hand, the hot liquid sloshing against the lids. She was terrified she would drop them, that the noise would give her away. 5 years. He had been lying to her for 5 years. For 5 years, he had another woman, another child, another family. While she worked herself to the bone, pinched pennies gave her last dime to pay off those damn loans that she thought they had taken out together for their future, for their life. "Damn, Mark, you're a sly dog," Steve said with admiration, a hint of genuine respect in his voice. "I couldn't do it. I wouldn't have the nerves. What if she finds out?" "What then?" "She won't find out," Mark replied confidently. There wasn't a shadow of a doubt in his voice. "She trusts me blindly?" "You get it. She's naive, clueless. She thinks I love her, that we're a team, but I'm just using her. Pretty soon, I'll squeeze the last drop out of her. I'm going to put the condo in Lauren's name. It's all set up. A buddy of mine who's a notary is going to help me backdate the paperwork. And I'll just tell Sophia that we need to separate, that the spark is gone, that we've grown apart, all that civilized divorce crap. She'll cry a bit, sure she'll complain, but she'll get used to it. She'll find some old fool who wants a quiet retirement, and I'll go live with Lauren and Luke in peace without that old dead weight on my back." Sophia stood in the dark, and her world collapsed around her. Every word hit her harder than a punch to the gut. This was her husband speaking. The man she had loved for 25 years, the man for whom she had sacrificed her dreams, worked herself to exhaustion, tolerated his coldness and distance, constantly justifying his eternal busyness and fatigue. "All right, Mark, I gotta run." Duty calls. Steve was wrapping up the conversation. His voice turned professional again. "Anyway, hang in there. Wire the cash, feed the second family, and tell Lauren I say hi. Let her know I'm happy for you guys." "Will do. Thanks, brother. We'll talk. See ya." The call ended with a short beep. Sophia heard Mark get up from his leather chair and pace around his office. His footsteps were light. He was even humming to himself some random pop melody. Her phone kept recording the red timer, blinking slowly on the screen. She stood leaning against the closet wall, her face buried in someone's winter coat, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. They were hot, burning tears. But they weren't tears of self-pity. It was rage. A cold, scorching rage that consumed everything. Mark kept pacing the office. She heard his footsteps, the creak of the leather chair, the sound of a drawer sliding open. He was looking for something, shuffling papers. Sophia remained motionless, terrified to move, terrified of making the slightest sound. The phone in her hand kept recording. The coffee cups were completely cold now. She still held them, pressing them to her chest, as if they were the only things anchoring her to this ruined world. The office door opened. Mark stepped out into the reception area. "Brenda, print out the contractor agreement for me, please, and get me a coffee. I've got a bit of a headache coming on." "Right away, Mr. Davis." Brenda's voice was tight. It was obvious she was struggling to keep her composure. The footsteps returned to the office. The door clicked shut. Sophia heard Brenda's quick, quiet steps approaching the closet. The door opened just a few inches. Through the gap, the secretary's pale face peered in. "Mrs. Davis," she whispered. "Did you hear it?" Sophia nodded, unable to speak. Her throat was tight with tears, with rage, with agony. "I am so sorry. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I didn't know how. I was terrified you wouldn't believe me, that he would twist it all around. Please forgive me." "How long have you known?" Sophia's voice sounded hoarse, foreign. "Almost from the beginning." 3 years, for sure. Sometimes, he would talk right in front of me. He didn't even try to hide it much. He thinks of secretaries like furniture, like we don't count. I tried to hint at it a few times when you came in, but I never had the courage to say it outright. "Close it," Sophia pleaded. "I need a little more time." Brenda nodded and gently shut the door. Sophia stood in the darkness. She stopped the recording, saved the file, and emailed it to herself, then uploaded it to her cloud drive. Just in case. Her hands moved on autopilot. Her brain was operating with a chilling precision, as if she weren't herself but someone else entirely. A few minutes later, Brenda walked into Mark's office. Sophia heard her voice. "Here is the contract, and your coffee. Thanks." "Hey, my wife didn't call by any chance, did she? She usually calls in the mornings, but it's been awfully quiet today." "No, she hasn't called," Brenda lied smoothly. "Well, maybe she's busy." The door closed again. Sophia remained in the closet, thinking with cold calculation. How do you live now? How can anyone live after something like this? 25 years of marriage. 25 years she had believed him, trusted him, loved him, worked to the point of a breakdown so they could live decently, so they could pay off the loans. And he had simply used her as a cash cow, as a tool to achieve his own goals. For 5 years he had another family. Another woman. A son. Luke. A child he was raising with her money. The money she earned, working 2 jobs. She worked as an RN at the hospital in the morning, and then pulled shifts at a private urgent care clinic until late at night. She would come home exhausted, entirely drained, and he would tell her they had shared goals, that they had to tough it out, that things would get easier soon. And all the while he was funding his second family. The condo. He was going to put the condo in Lauren's name. The condo they bought together where she lived, what she considered her home. This whole time he had been plotting to leave her with absolutely nothing, to squeeze her dry and throw her away like used trash. Sophia felt the rage rushing through her body like wildfire. Her hands balled into fists. No. It wasn't going to go down like that. He was not going to get what he wanted. She would not let him toss her aside like garbage. She wasn't going to cry, and she wasn't going to pity herself. She was going to act. Another 20 minutes passed. Sophia heard Mark on the phone with the corporate partners discussing the details of a contract. His voice was calm, professional, confident, as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't just been discussing how he was scamming his wife and plotting to ruin her life. Finally, the conference call ended. Mark stepped out of his office. "I'm heading out for lunch," he told Brenda. "I'll be back in an hour." Understood. The main reception door opened and closed. His footsteps faded down the hallway. Silence. Brenda walked over to the closet and opened the door. "He's gone," she said softly. Sophia stepped out of the closet and set the cold coffees down on the desk. Her legs were numb, her back ached. She stretched her shoulders and wiped her hands over her face. Her eyes were dry. The tears were completely gone. Only a cold determination remained. "Thank you," she said to Brenda, looking her straight in the eye. "Thank you for hiding me. If it weren't for you, I never would have known the truth. I really am so sorry." Brenda looked at her with guilt. "I should have told you earlier. You did what you could. I don't blame you. The only person to blame is him. Just him." Sophia pulled out her phone and showed her the audio file. "I have proof. Everything is recorded. Every single word." Brenda nodded. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know exactly yet. But I am not going to let him kick me out of my own life." Sophia turned toward the door of her husband's private office. She knew where he kept his documents. She knew the combination to his safe. He never bothered to change it. He assumed she had no reason to ever snoop around in there. The safe was in a corner behind his armchair, disguised as a standard filing cabinet. "Can I go in?" she asked Brenda. "Of course. But he could come back early." "I'll be fast." Sophia walked into her husband's office. The room was spacious, with a large window overlooking the downtown skyline, a massive dark wood desk, a leather executive chair, and shelves lined with binders and books. A diploma hung on the wall next to a photo from some corporate retreat. On his desk was a framed photo of the two of them. Sophia picked it up and stared at it. The picture was from about 10 years ago. They had their arms around each other, smiling. She remembered that day. They had gone to the Outer Banks on vacation. They were happy. Or so she had thought. Sophia put the frame face down on the desk, walked over to the safe and punched in the combination 2007, the year they got married. The safe beeped and popped open with a soft click. Inside were stacks of folders and documents. Contracts, bank statements. Sophia quickly sifted through the papers, looking for anything crucial. The condo documents. Here they were, the deed to their place listed under both of their names. She grabbed it and shoved it into her purse. She also grabbed their marriage certificate, a loan agreement, and another, and another. Sophia skimmed the amounts and the dates. Most of the personal loans were under Mark's name, but she was listed as the co-signer. That meant she was legally on the hook for them. At the bottom of the safe lay a small leather notebook. Sophia opened it. Passwords, notes, phone numbers, and a name, Lauren Quinn. Along with an address and a phone number. Sophia took a picture of the page with her phone. That could be very useful. She closed the safe, spun the dial, and took one last look around the office. Everything looked exactly the way it had. Mark wouldn't notice she had been in there. For now. Sophia walked out of the office and nodded to Brenda. "I'm leaving." "Thank you again." Mrs. Davis, the secretary, stopped her. If you ever need a witness or a sworn statement, I'm willing to confirm everything. I sometimes recorded his conversations when he was being especially careless. I have some audio of my own. Sophia looked at her surprised. Why did you do that? Why take the risk? Because you are a good person, and he treats you like an object. I couldn't just sit in silence and watch. Thank you. Sophia hugged Brenda briefly but tightly. You are very brave. She left the office, rode the elevator down, and stepped out into the street. It had stopped raining. The sky was beginning to clear, and patches of sunlight were breaking through the clouds. Sophia got into her car, tossed her purse with the documents onto the passenger seat, and started the engine. But she didn't drive away. She sat there, staring through the windshield, organizing her thoughts. What now? Where to go? She didn't want to go home. She didn't want to see him or talk to him or pretend nothing had happened. She needed a plan. A clear, calculated plan. Sophia pulled out her phone and dialed her best friend Sarah's number. They had been friends since college. Sarah was a CPA, a practical, intelligent woman who always gave excellent advice. Hello, Sarah answered. Hey, Sarah, I need your help. Sophia's voice trembled slightly. Can I come over to your house right now? Of course. Come over. I'll tell you when I get there. It's an emergency. Sophia tossed the phone onto the seat, pulled out of the parking garage, and drove mechanically, paying zero attention to the scenery. Her thoughts were swirling in a chaotic storm. 5 years of deception. 5 years. He had lived a double life. How had he pulled it off? How did he split his time between two families? The business trips. Of course, he frequently went out of town for 3 or 4 days, sometimes a whole week. He always claimed it was for work site visits, negotiations. But in reality, he was going to see her. Lauren. And his son Luke. Sophia remembered how he would return from those trips tired, quiet. He would go straight to the shower, and then sit at his computer to catch up on emails. He never gave details about where he had been, or what he had done. He brushed off her questions, saying it was just boring corporate routine. And she believed him. Stupid, naive, gullible. The money. How much money was he funneling to this second family? Sophia tried to calculate how much they were paying toward those loans every month. At least $2,000. And that was just the loan payments plus the HOA fees, groceries, utilities. She worked herself to the brink of collapse, just to make ends meet. And Mark always claimed his corporate salary wasn't that high after taxes that they needed to budget that times were tough. So she skimped on herself. She wore old scrubs, and clothes gave up, going out to dinners, postponed her own dental appointments because every penny counted. Meanwhile, he was fully funding a second family, paying for private sports lessons for a kid, buying him gear and toys. Lauren probably lived in a nice house and maybe didn't even work, staying home to raise her kid on Sophia's dime. On the money Sophia earned with her own blood, sweat, and health. Her car stopped at a red light. Sophia looked in the rearview mirror and saw her pale face, her red eyes, the dried tracks of tears. She wiped her cheeks roughly and tried to compose herself. She couldn't fall apart now. She couldn't show weakness. She had to survive this and come out on top as a victor, not a victim. The light turned green. She hit the gas. 20 minutes later, she arrived at Sarah's house in the suburbs. She parked in the driveway, walked up to the porch, and rang the bell. Sarah opened the door immediately. She had clearly been watching from the window. Seeing her friend's face, she instantly knew something catastrophic had happened. Oh my God, Sophia, what's wrong? Come inside quick. They went straight to the kitchen. Sarah sat Sophia down at the island and placed a hot mug of tea in front of her. Tell me exactly what happened. And Sophia told her everything from beginning to end. The surprise coffee, the coat closet, Mark on speakerphone, the 5 years of lies, the second family, the plot to transfer the condo into Lauren's name. Sarah listened in stunned silence. Her face grew darker and darker. What an absolute bastard, she exhaled when Sophia finished. I always thought he was a little arrogant, a bit cold. But this takes genuine sociopathy. Sarah, what do I do? Sophia looked at her friend pleadingly. I don't even know where to start. You start with a ruthless lawyer, Sarah said decisively. Today, I have a connection, a shark of a family law attorney. I'm going to call his office right now and see if he can squeeze you in. She pulled out her phone, dialed a number, and paced over to the window. Sophia sat at the counter, hugging the mug with both hands, staring blankly ahead. Her life was in ruins, but strangely, she didn't just feel pain, she also felt a bizarre sense of relief. She finally knew the truth. She wasn't crazy. She could finally take action instead of living in a manufactured illusion. "I got him," Sarah said, walking back. "He can see you today at 6:00 p.m. I'll text you the address. His name is Alexander Vance. He's got decades of experience. He's going to help you rip him to shreds." "Thank you, Sarah. I don't know what I'd do without you. Don't even mention it. You'd do the same for me." "Listen, are you going to go home tonight?" Sophia thought about it. "I will. But I won't say a word to him until I've talked to the lawyer. I have to play this perfectly so he doesn't have time to transfer any assets or hide cash. Smart. Play it completely cool. Act like you know absolutely nothing. If he sniffs out that something's wrong, he'll start moving money offshore." They sat together for another hour and a half strategizing. Sarah explained that she would need to gather every financial document she could find: bank statements, pay stubs, tax returns. The more evidence, the better. Sophia listened, took notes on her phone, and nodded. Her brain was operating with icy clarity. The emotions had been shoved into a tightly locked box. At 5:00 p.m., she left her friend's house and drove downtown for her appointment with the attorney. The law firm was located in an upscale high-rise. Sophia rode the elevator up, found the suite, and walked in. A young woman was sitting at the reception desk. "Good evening. I'm here to see Mr. Vance. I'm Sophia Davis." "Go right on back, Mrs. Davis. He's expecting you." Alexander Vance turned out to be a man in his 50s with sharp graying hair and a piercing gaze. He stood up from behind his massive mahogany desk, shook her hand firmly, and offered her a seat. "Good evening, Sophia. Sarah gave me the bullet points of your situation. Let's dig into the details. Tell me everything in chronological order and don't leave anything out." Sophia recounted the entire story again. Alexander Vance listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions and taking rapid notes on a legal pad. When she finished, he leaned back in his leather chair and looked at her thoughtfully. "You have the audio recording of the conversation?" "Yes." Sophia pulled out her phone and played the file. The lawyer listened to the whole thing and nodded slowly. "Excellent. This is a devastating piece of evidence. In our state, only one party needs to consent to a recording if they are part of the conversation. But since you recorded a conversation, you weren't actively participating in it. Skirts the wiretapping laws. However, because it proves intent to commit financial fraud and dissipate marital assets, we can absolutely use it as leverage. And it will heavily influence a judge. Now the documents. You said you took the deed to the condo." "Yes, right here." Sophia pulled the papers out of her purse and placed them on the desk. Alexander Vance examined them carefully, flipping through the pages. "The condo is deeded as joint tenants with right of survivorship." "That's good. It means in the event of a divorce, it's considered marital property and subject to equitable distribution. But if he tries to quitclaim it to a third party behind your back, that's textbook fraud. We can immediately file a lis pendens, a notice of pending legal action, which will freeze the property. He won't be able to sell it, transfer it, or borrow against it." "What about the personal loans?" Sophia asked. "I'm a co-signer on almost all of them. We need to look at the promissory notes. If he is the primary borrower and you are the co-signer, the bank will still come after you if he defaults. However, during the divorce proceedings, we will argue that these loans were taken out under fraudulent pretenses, that the funds were intentionally diverted to a paramour and not used for the marital estate. That's called dissipation of marital assets. We will ask the judge to assign 100% of that debt to him in the final decree, so I might not have to pay them. I don't make 100% guarantees, but your chances are incredibly high, especially with the recording where he openly admits he used you to fund his mistress. It's a smoking gun. Now the real question is, what is your ultimate goal here?" Sophia stayed silent for a moment, organizing her thoughts. "I want a divorce. I want to keep the condo, or at least my full equity in it. I want him legally responsible for every single one of his loans, and I don't want him to get a single red cent of the money I broke my back to earn." Alexander Vance smiled thinly. "Those are very reasonable demands. We'll get to work immediately. Tomorrow morning I will file the petition for dissolution of marriage and a motion for a temporary restraining order on all financial accounts and real estate. That will lock him out of making any major moves. You will need to gather every financial document you have in that house tonight: credit card statements, utility bills, receipts, W-2S pay stubs. Everything that proves you were the one funding the marital household. Can you do that? I'll get it all tonight. One more thing. Do not say a word to your husband yet. Act as if nothing is wrong. We need the element of surprise so he doesn't have time to drain the bank accounts or destroy evidence. I understand. They spoke for another 40 minutes, discussing timelines, strategies, and his retainer fee. Sophia signed the representation agreement and handed over her credit card for the initial payment. As she left his office, she felt a strange sense of calm. Yes, her life was shattering into pieces, but she wasn't sitting in the rubble crying. She was building a weapon. It was dark by the time Sophia left the law firm. The streetlights flickered on, illuminating the rain-slicked pavement. She got into her car and checked the time. 8:00 p.m. Mark would already be home sitting on the couch waiting for dinner like he always did. Before today, she would have panicked, worried about being late. Now she simply didn't care. She started the engine and drove home at the exact speed limit, taking her time. Along the way, she practiced how she would act. Calm, natural, like it was just another boring Tuesday. It was going to take everything she had, but she would do it. For herself. For her future. The condo greeted her with lights glowing in the windows and the familiar smell of home. Sophia unlocked the front door and stepped into the entryway. Mark was sitting on the living room sofa, watching ESPN. He turned around when he heard the door. "You're finally home. Where the hell have you been? I thought something happened to you." "I was over at Sarah's," Sophia replied, kicking off her shoes. Her voice was remarkably steady, completely flat. "We haven't seen each other in a while. We decided to catch up. Is there going to be dinner? I'm starving." Before hearing those words in that tone would have triggered an automatic instinct to rush to the kitchen and feed her husband. Now, it just triggered a spike of disgust. He didn't even ask how she was, or what she and Sarah had talked about. Just, "Is there dinner? I'll make it right now," she said, walking into the kitchen. She cooked like a robot, pulling ingredients from the fridge, chopping vegetables, tossing the meat into a skillet. Her hands moved on their own. Her mind was miles away. She remembered Mark's words from the speakerphone. Naive. Clueless. Old dead weight. That was how he saw her. That was all she was to him. A utility. An ATM. Half an hour later, dinner was ready. Sophia set the table and called him in. He walked over, sat down, and started eating in total silence. She sat across from him, just watching him, an average familiar face she had known for decades. The graying temples, the laugh lines, the familiar scar on his chin from a childhood bike accident. How could she have been so blind? How did she not see that behind this face was a monster? "It's good," Mark mumbled with his mouth full, not looking up. "Thanks. Meetings with the partners. Business trip. Of course. Going to see his second family. To see Lauren and Luke." "Got it," Sophia nodded. "When do you leave?" "Monday morning. I'll be back Friday night." They finished dinner in silence. Mark stood up, dropped his plate in the sink, and went back to the living room to watch TV. Sophia stayed in the kitchen, washing the dishes, wiping down the counters, putting everything perfectly in its place. Then she went to the master bedroom, shut the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and pulled out her phone. She texted Sarah. "Thank you for everything. I hired the lawyer. The process is in motion. I'm at home. Playing it cool." The reply came a minute later. "You're a badass. I'm with you 100%. Call me anytime if you need to vent." Sophia lay down on the bed and closed her eyes. She couldn't sleep. Her thoughts spun relentlessly. She kept reviewing different moments from their marriage, searching for the red flags she had ignored. They were definitely there. The phone calls he wouldn't answer when she was in the room. The texts he read and immediately deleted. The nights he came home late, blaming it on client dinners. She had swallowed every lie, never pushed, never snooped. She had trusted him. The next morning, Mark left for the corporate office early per usual. Sophia got up, put on her scrubs, and drove to her shift at the hospital. Work was a blessing. It kept her distracted. Patients' IVs, charts, paperwork, it all flowed as usual. But underneath it all, a coiled spring of tension tightened in her chest. She knew the explosion was coming. Soon Mark would find out that she knew, and then the real war would begin. 2 days later, Alexander Vance called her. "Sophia, the paperwork is filed. The petition for divorce is in the system. The judge granted the temporary restraining order on the condo and the joint bank accounts. A process server is going to hand your husband his summons at his office tomorrow morning. Be prepared for his reaction." "I'm ready." "One more thing. His secretary Brenda reached out to my office. She has agreed to sign a sworn affidavit. She also provided us with digital copies of some audio recordings where your husband openly discusses his mistress and the financial diversion. It makes our case virtually bulletproof. Please extend my thanks to her. The next day, Sophia was at the clinic when her phone rang. The caller ID said Mark. She stared at the screen, took a deep breath, and answered. "What the hell is this summons?" His voice was unhinged, screaming. "What did you do?" "I filed for divorce," Sophia replied, her tone ice cold. "It's time to end this charade." "Sophia, have you lost your damn mind? What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that I know everything. About Lauren. About Luke. About how you've been draining me dry for 5 years. I know everything." Silence. A long, heavy, suffocating silence. Then, "Who told you? How did you find out?" "It doesn't matter. What matters is that I recorded your conversation. Every single word. How you bragged to Steve about bleeding me dry. How I was just a naive idiot. How you were going to commit title fraud and put the condo in your whore's name. I have it all." More silence. She could hear his ragged breathing through the receiver. "Sophia, it's not what you think." "No, Mark. It is exactly what I think. My lawyer has already filed the injunctions. The condo is frozen. You can't touch it. Your bank accounts are locked. You are going to pay off your own fraudulent loans, and I am getting a divorce and taking what is mine. You're going to regret this." His voice dropped into a vicious, threatening growl. "I'll find a way to leave you with absolutely nothing." "Bring it on," Sophia said, and hung up. Her hands were shaking slightly, but inside she felt an iron core of certainty. She had done it. She had dropped the bomb without screaming, without crying, without begging him for closure. She just laid out the facts and walked away. That evening, when she returned home, Mark wasn't there. Half of his clothes were missing from the closet. His toothbrush was gone. From the master bath, his files were cleared out of the home office. He had moved out. Good. That made it easier. Sophia walked through the condo feeling a bizarre sense of lightness. The suffocating weight of his presence, his coldness, was gone. It was just her and a clean, quiet peace. The following day, she met with Alexander Vance again. He informed her that Mark had retained his own counsel, a sleazy defense attorney who had immediately filed a countersuit demanding half the equity in the condo and trying to claim the personal loans were used for joint marital expenses. "He's going to fight dirty," the lawyer warned her. "But we have the high ground. The audio, recording the secretary's affidavit, the financial records you pulled. It all paints a crystal clear picture of a man running a parallel life on your dime. How long will the divorce take? Given that it's contested, probably 6 to 8 months. Maybe longer if he drags out discovery. But we will win." Sophia nodded. 6 to 8 months. She could survive that. A week passed. Mark tried calling her dozens of times. He texted her relentlessly. First, he threatened her. Then he tried playing the victim, begging for a chance to explain. He demanded they meet for coffee. Sophia blocked his number. One evening, he showed up at her building and waited by the lobby doors. When she walked out to get her mail, he ambushed her. "Sophia, please, let's just talk like civilized adults." "We have absolutely nothing to talk about," she replied, stepping around him. "Talk to my lawyer. You are destroying my life. I have a family. I have a kid." She stopped dead in her tracks, turned slowly, and looked him dead in the eye. "You had a family here with me for 25 years. And you chose to burn it to the ground. Now live with the ashes." She walked back inside without looking back. Mark stood on the sidewalk, looking pathetic and entirely defeated. Sarah was her rock through it all. They met up constantly, drinking wine, talking for hours. Sarah helped organize the endless piles of financial disclosures, double-checking every bank statement, calming Sophia down whenever she had a moment of doubt. "Are you doing the right thing?" Sarah would say. "He doesn't deserve your forgiveness. He doesn't even deserve the air you breathe." Brenda kept in touch too. She would text Sophia to check in, asking how she was holding up. Sophia was immensely grateful to her. Without Brenda's momentary panic, she would still be living in a lie. The days turned into weeks. The initial court hearing for temporary orders was set for the end of the month. Sophia prepared herself, mentally rehearsing her posture, her demeanor. Alexander Vance assured her that everything was locked in, that the evidence was overwhelming. The day of the hearing arrived. Sophia walked into the county courthouse wearing a sharp, tailored suit, carrying a leather portfolio. Mark was already in the hallway with his lawyer, a slick-looking guy in an expensive suit. When Mark saw her, he immediately looked at the floor. The hearing lasted about an hour. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with piercing eyes, listened to both attorneys, reviewed the initial filings, and read the transcripts of the audio recordings. Her face remained entirely neutral, but Sophia noticed her jaw clench when she read the part about Mark calling his wife an old dead weight. The court will issue a scheduling order, the judge announced. In the meantime, a forensic accountant will be appointed to trace all marital assets and bank transfers. We will reconvene in 45 days for a status conference. They walked out of the courtroom. Mark tried to approach her, but his lawyer put a hand on his chest, stopping him. Sophia walked right past them, staring straight ahead. "It went perfectly," Alexander Vance said as they got into the elevator. "The judge is clearly furious with him. The audio transcript did exactly what it was supposed to do. Now we wait for the forensic audit. It will prove exactly where every dollar went. It will mathematically prove he was funding his mistress with marital funds. He's dead in the water." Sophia nodded and stepped out into the bright morning sun. She pulled out her phone and texted Sarah. "First round goes to us." The judge sees right through him. The reply came instantly, "Hell yes. Keep your boot on his neck." Sophia put her phone away and walked to her car. Yes, soon this would all be over, and she would be free. Free from the lies, the betrayal, the man who saw her as nothing but an ATM. She was going to start a new life. A life where she was valued, where she didn't have to work herself into an early grave so a parasite could enjoy the fruits of her labor. The war wasn't over yet, but the worst part was behind her. She had found the truth, she had accepted it, and she had fought back. And that was already a massive victory. The 45 days until the next hearing dragged on. Sophia went to work at the hospital. She came home to her quiet, empty condo, cooked dinner for one, and watched whatever she wanted on TV. Life went on, but the coiled spring inside her remained tight. Every day she checked her email, called, her lawyer asked about the forensic audit. Finally, Alexander Vance called her with the news. "Sophia, the forensic accounting report is back. It is a massacre. Over the last 5 years, approximately $150,000 was siphoned from your joint accounts and his direct deposits into an account controlled by Lauren Quinn. It was a systematic monthly diversion of marital funds. It is undeniable proof of dissipation of assets. $150,000. Sophia repeated, feeling a fresh wave of nausea and rage. "Yes." Furthermore, through discovery we subpoenaed his corporate emails. We found hundreds of exchanges between your husband and Miss Quinn. They discuss buying a house in her name. They discuss legally maneuvering to hide his assets from you. It's premeditated fraud. How did you know exactly where to look in his emails? Your friend Brenda pointed our forensic IT guys exactly to the hidden folders on his server. Because it was a corporate server and she had admin access, it was fully discoverable in the subpoena. Sophia smiled. Brenda had saved her again. "Thank you. So, what happens at the final trial?" "He's going to get slaughtered. I am highly confident the judge will award you the lion's share of the marital estate." The final divorce trial began at 9:00 a.m. sharp. Sophia wore her sharp suit again, sitting beside her attorney, her posture perfect, her face unreadable. Mark sat at the defense table looking pale, exhausted, and 10 years older. He had dark bags under his eyes. The judge reviewed the forensic report. Mark's lawyer tried to mount a pathetic defense, arguing that the money transferred was for personal discretionary spending and that the court shouldn't punish him simply for having an extramarital affair. The judge cut him off sharply. "Counselor, the emails and financial records clearly indicate a premeditated scheme to defraud the marital estate to fund a parallel household. This is not a case of simple infidelity. This is systematic financial abuse." Then Brenda was called to the stand. The secretary looked nervous, but resolute. Under oath, she confirmed that she had repeatedly heard Mark Davis discussing his second family, openly bragging about using his wife's income and plotting to transfer the deed of the condo. Mark stared at the table. His lawyer whispered frantically in his ear, but Mark just shook his head. "Does the respondent have anything to say?" the judge asked. Mark looked up at the bench, then over at Sophia. His eyes were hollow. "I love Lauren," he said quietly. "I wanted to be with her. But I couldn't afford the lifestyle on my own. I thought I could manage it so nobody got hurt. Instead, you systematically lied to your wife for 5 years, drained $150,000 of marital assets to fund a mistress, and actively plotted to leave your legal spouse homeless," the judge said with dripping contempt. The court is ready to rule. The marriage between Mark Davis and Sophia Davis is hereby dissolved. The real property located at the marital address is awarded 100% to the petitioner Sophia Davis. The respondent Mark Davis is ordered to assume 100% liability for all personal loans and lines of credit. The court will issue an order removing Sophia Davis as a guarantor on said loans due to fraudulent inducement. Furthermore, to account for the dissipation of marital assets, the respondent is ordered to pay the petitioner a lump sum of $75,000 from his retirement accounts. The judge banged her gavel. "We are adjourned." It was over. Sophia sat in her chair, unable to fully process the words. She had won. The condo was completely hers. His crushing debt was no longer her problem. She was getting half his $401k. She had won. Alexander Vance put a hand on her shoulder. "Congratulations, Sophia. You are officially a free woman." She turned to look at him, and only then did the tears finally fall. Tears of overwhelming relief, of joy, of total liberation. "Thank you for everything. You did the hard part. I just handled the paperwork." They walked out of the courtroom. In the hallway, Mark was arguing with his lawyer. When he saw Sophia, he broke away and stepped toward her. "Sophia, wait. We have nothing left to say to each other," she said, her voice steady and strong. "You have Lauren and Luke now. Go live with them. I'm going to start living for myself." She walked past him, never looking back. Mark stood in the sterile courthouse hallway, completely ruined. Outside, Sarah was waiting by the steps. She threw her arms around Sophia and squeezed her tight. "Tell me you crushed him. It's all mine. The condo. My freedom. Everything. Oh my God, I am so happy for you. We are getting blackout drunk tonight." I bought the expensive champagne. They got into Sarah's SUV and drove toward her house. Along the way, Sophia looked out the window at the city passing by. Spring was in full swing. The trees were bright green. People were wearing light jackets and smiling. The world had kept spinning, and now she was rejoining it, fully whole, fully free. At Sarah's house, they popped the cork and poured the champagne. "To your freedom," Sarah toasted, raising her glass. "And to you, finding the absolute spine of steel to fight back." "To freedom," Sophia echoed and took a drink. They talked, laughed, and recounted how insane this entire journey had been. Sophia talked about that terrifying moment in the coat closet, standing in the dark, listening to her entire life being ripped away from her. But now, months later, she realized that day hadn't been an ending at all. It was the beginning. The beginning of her actual life. "So, what are you going to do now?" Sarah asked. "I don't know exactly. First, I'm quitting my evening shifts at the urgent care clinic. I'm going to work normal hours like a normal person, and I'm going to take a real vacation. I want to rent a house in the Outer Banks, drink wine on the porch, and maybe take a class, learn something new, paint maybe, do it. Live for you." "You spent decades living for someone else." Sophia nodded. She had. She had lived for Mark. Working, sacrificing, enduring. Now, everything was going to be different. A few days later, Sophia handed in her resignation at the urgent care clinic. She kept her RN job at the hospital. She liked her coworkers there. The benefits were great. And her single salary was more than enough to live comfortably now that she wasn't paying off a scammer's debts. She started purging the condo. She threw away the junk Mark had left behind, his ugly ties, the boring business books he never read. She rearranged the living room furniture. She bought new, airy, cream-colored curtains. The condo completely transformed. It breathed. It was her home now. Hers alone. Brenda called her a week after the trial. "Sophia, how are you holding up?" "I'm amazing, Brenda. Seriously, thank you again. I owe you my life. I'm just glad the good guy won. Listen, I wanted to tell you. I quit. I handed in my notice. I couldn't stomach working for that company anymore, not with him still strutting around the office. Did you find something else?" "Yep. Got hired as an executive assistant at a tech firm across town. Better pay, better hours. Anyway, I wanted to see if you wanted to grab a coffee this weekend." Sophia smiled warmly. "I would love that. Let's do Saturday." They met at the same coffee shop where Sophia had bought those 2 fateful cappuccinos. They sat by the window, ordered lattes and pastries, and just talked. "How does it really feel?" Brenda asked. "Liberating. For the first time in 25 years, I can actually breathe. It had to hurt, though. The betrayal. It was agonizing. But honestly, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I could have spent another 10 years with him, slowly being bled dry, until he dumped me when I was 60. You saved me. You're incredibly strong, Sophia. I wasn't at first. At first I thought I was going to die right there in your coat closet. But then I realized I had a choice. I could lay down and let him walk all over me, or I could stand up and take a baseball bat to his plans. They talked for hours. Brenda admitted she had felt horribly guilty for years, knowing the truth and saying nothing. Sophia assured her that she held zero resentment. Everything had played out exactly the way it needed to. A month passed. Mark didn't appeal the judge's ruling. He couldn't afford a lawyer to do it anyway. The divorce decree became final. Sophia received the finalized deed, proving the condo was 100% in her name. The banks sent her official letters releasing her as a guarantor from all his personal loans. She sat on her new couch holding the paperwork and smiled. It was truly over. Sarah helped her plan the vacation. They found a gorgeous beachfront rental in the Outer Banks, a quiet, breezy house with a wraparound porch right on the sand. Sophia booked the dates, packed a suitcase full of new clothes, and loaded her car. As she was walking out of her condo, she stopped in the doorway and looked back. The space was bright, clean, and entirely hers. Her sanctuary. She locked the door and drove toward the coast. The weather in North Carolina was perfect. Warm sun, a cool ocean breeze. The Atlantic crashed rhythmically against the shore. Sophia walked barefoot on the beach, feeling the warm sand between her toes. She read novels she had bought years ago and never opened. She swam in the ocean, drank cold white wine on the porch, ate fresh seafood. She simply existed. And it was glorious. One evening, sitting on the deck, watching the tide roll in, she pulled out her phone and texted Sarah. You know what? I thought the divorce was the end of the world. But it was just the beginning of a life where I actually love myself. Sarah replied immediately, I always knew you had it in you. You're a badass. Drink a margarita for me. Sophia laughed, locked her phone, and watched the sunset. The sky exploded into brilliant shades of orange, pink, and deep violet. It was breathtaking. The world was beautiful, and for the first time in her life she had the freedom to actually see it. When she returned from the beach, she felt reborn. She was tanned, rested, and buzzing with energy. At the hospital, the other nurses immediately noticed the change. Sophia, you are glowing, one of the charge nurses said. What's your secret? I dropped 200 pounds of dead weight, she smiled. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Sophia signed up for an oil painting class at a local community art center. She had always wanted to learn how to paint, but Mark had always scoffed at the idea, saying it was a waste of money. Now she had the time and the funds. 2 evenings a week she stood in front of an easel blending colors, working with charcoal and oils. It was therapeutic. It allowed her to channel all the leftover emotions onto a canvas. She made new friends in the class, people of all ages and backgrounds. They drank coffee during breaks and talked about art. Nobody asked invasive questions about her past. They just created together. One evening after class, a man approached her easel. He was in his 50s, tall, with salt and pepper hair and kind, crinkling eyes. Excuse me, he said. I've been admiring your work. You have a very distinct style. There's a real sense of liberation in your brushstrokes. Like someone who just took a massive breath of fresh air. Sophia laughed out loud. You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I did. I'm David. He held out his hand. Sophia. She shook it. They started talking. David told her he was a retired architect who had recently decided to pursue the creative passions he had ignored during his corporate career. Sophia told him she too had recently started prioritizing her own happiness. They began getting coffee after class, talking about art, travel, and life. There was no pressure, no expectations. Just 2 people enjoying a genuine connection. A year went by. Sophia celebrated her 51st birthday with Sarah, Brenda, David, and a few friends from the hospital. They hosted a dinner party at her condo, drinking wine, eating great food, and laughing until their stomachs hurt. You know, Sophia, Sarah said late into the evening as they were clearing plates from the dining table. I am so damn proud of you. A year ago you were standing in my kitchen looking like a ghost. And look at you now. Are you happy? Sophia stopped wiping the counter and thought about it. I am. I really am. And you know what the crazy part is? I'm actually grateful for that day in the closet. If Brenda hadn't panicked, if I hadn't recorded that call, I would still be a slave to his lies. Now I'm actually living. She walked over to the living room window and looked out at the city skyline. The streetlights glowing, the cars moving like tiny rivers of light. The world was moving forward, and she was moving with it, free, independent, and truly happy. She never saw Mark again. She heard through a mutual acquaintance that he had officially married Lauren, but that his life was a miserable wreck. He was drowning in the debt he had been assigned, paying off his lawyers and working 80-hour weeks just to keep his head above water. Sophia felt absolutely nothing for him, no rage, no pity. Just complete apathy. He had made his choices, and now he was living with the consequences. And she had made hers. The choice to survive. The choice to value herself. Standing by the window of her beautiful condo holding a glass of wine, Sophia smiled. Life was moving forward, and she was ready for it. Ready for new adventures, new people, new art. She was ready to be happy because she knew without a shadow of a doubt that she deserved it. She had finally figured that out. Thank you for listening to this story. Let us know in the comments what you thought. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.